Good morning and welcome to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. We are delighted to have you here, whether you're in person or attending virtually. It is good to be together, a community of youth, adults, and children, sharing the values of courage, reverence, and compassion. I'm Mina Hata, she, her, and I am a member of the board of directors. If you are accompanied by children today, we warmly welcome your whole family. We invite you to explore our Soul Work Center, where you can explore different activities designed to help people of all ages actively engage with today's worship service. As we live into what it means to be a multi-generational community, we welcome the noises, movement, and mirth that little ones bring to our services. If you have a joy or sorrow you would like to be shared in the meditation, please add it to our meditation bowl, which is also in the Soul Work Center, or in the chat box before the opening hymn. Please make sure to gain consent before you put someone's full name into the bowl. Thanks to our guest musician, Lynn O'Brien, for her centering and soul-filling music today. You can find Lynn's recordings and speak with her at the table in the atrium following today's service. Thank you for being here and for sharing your gifts with us. An announcement: on Wednesday, September 6th, 5:30 to 7:30, any and all adults are invited to the choir invitational. We will have a light meal in the social hall and then sing in the sanctuary, and childcare will be provided. No experience, music reading skills, or a commitment is necessary. See the e-news announcement to fill out the sign-up form and reach out to Becky Ponch, Jody McCormick, or Olivia Dirks with any questions. You are warmly invited to join us after the service in our social hall. There are tables and information about upcoming events and delicious coffee. We hope that you will check it out. Welcome to our church. Together, we grow our souls and serve the world in love.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Jessica Clay. My pronouns are she, her. This is Eleanor Clay. Her pronouns for now are she, her, till she tells us differently. Can you say good morning? Say good morning. So today we're having a multi-generational service. So what does that mean? This is a response. What does that mean? It means noise is okay. Now, if it's not a multi-generational service, is noise okay? Yes, okay, good. And who can tell me where the Soulworks Center is? Okay, who didn't know where the Soulworks Center is? It's okay, no shame. There weren't a lot of hands up. So the Soulworks Center is over here. Let's all wave to the kiddos over here. But does that mean that the kids have to stay over there? No. Does that mean they have to go in that room? No, it means they could be running up and down in the front, right? Okay, so this is what it means to welcome all the generations. She is not going to be here the whole service. I'm just going to say that, though. Welcome all the generations and take some of them to the nursery. And so on other mornings, when our children and youth and their facilitators leave the sanctuary after the story and gather in their circles, it's our practice to first take a breath and notice that threshold. So we invite the kiddos to take a breath as they leave this space and notice that threshold. So today you are invited to take a breath. So let's take a breath together. We take breaths together in this space to become present, to notice what's happening in our bodies, in our minds, as we prepare to enter worship together. And you are also invited to do that when I ring the singing bowl, to take breaths, to honor this space and this time together. And so this morning we are, as I've said, we're all worshiping together, all of us, and so we are crossing this threshold into worship all together right now in this space. And we do this by singing together, breathing together, listening together, being wiggly together, and holding space for one another. And this morning we invite all ages to engage in a florilegium practice. Who knows what that is? Okay, a couple of hands up. All right. We have talked about it before. That's not a quiz, though. But hopefully by the end of this morning, everyone's hands will be up, yes? Okay, great. So a florilegium practice is a sacred reading practice that invites the reader or listener to make note of sparklets, little bits of wisdom that are found in story or song. These can be words or phrases or even feelings that are evoked for you during worship today. So what's florilegium? Okay, there we go. Good. Sparklets. We have provided space in the order of worship to make note of these sparklets. So you'll notice it's a little bigger today. And to make note of these sparklets, of course, I lost my space here. And you'll also find large pieces of paper on the wall and Post-its for those who would like to share sparklets in community. Where are those? Over in the Soulwork Center, or right on the, is it on the outside? I can't see. And there's one over there as well. So if you want to share them in community, you can feel free to get up and share them. If you are joining us on Zoom, let's give everyone a wave who's joining us on Zoom this morning. We're so glad you're here. You can add sparklets in the chat box. You can add to these during the service or anytime after the service. You'll also find activity packets, fidgets, and other activities to help engage with worship in the... Yes, and if you're an adult, can you go get a fidget toy? Yes, you can. So let us cross this threshold into worshipful space. And as you hear the singing bowl, I invite you to take 3 breaths and stretch your body if you need to, noticing the sacred beauty of this space. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together we make it a holy place.
As Unitarian Universalists, we are free to create our own sacred text, the one that speaks to us and keeps us grounded in our spiritual path. I like to collect readings and poetry. Who doesn't? I have my favorites, and they are a loose collection that includes books, cutouts, and scrapbooks, and the occasional read in my daily planner. I consider all these sources my way to sacred reading. Let me share with you a poem, My Help is in the Mountain by Nancy Wood. It is one of my sacred texts, and I became aware of it after I did a lot of hiking in the Cascade Mountains. My help is in the mountain, where I take myself to heal the earthly wounds that people give to me. I find a rock with sun on it and a stream where the water runs gentle, and the trees which one by one give me company. So I must stay for a long time until I have grown from the rock, and the stream is running through me, and I cannot tell myself from one tall tree. Then I know that nothing touches me, nor makes me run away. My help is in the mountain, That I take away with me. Let us light the chalice today for our own inner light, that we might be illuminated by our own sacred readings.
I'm Amy, and my pronouns are she, her. Please join me in the opening words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Our opening hymn is number 396 in the gray hymnal, I Know This Rose Will Open, and we're going to sing it through 3 times. Please rise in body or spirit.
My name is Nico, and my pronouns are they, them. Storytelling is interactive. I can sit here in this room and tell a story, but it does not really come alive until you receive the words and imagine them into being in your mind. When we tell stories at church, we often invite you into a posture of imagination. Today's story is a little different from many other stories because it does not really have an ending. It leaves loose ends untied and a giant question about the meaning of the story. So as you imagine this story, I also invite you to pay attention to the feelings that rise in you. You don't have to do anything with these feelings, but do notice them in your body and notice what they do to your imagining of the story. Today's story is A Man, Two Tigers, and a Strawberry by Sarah Conover in Kindness, a treasury of Buddhist wisdom for children and parents. Once, a man gathering wood from the forest floor looked up to find himself eye to eye with a ferocious tiger. He chucked his load of wood at the tiger, turned and fled as quickly as human legs would move. He wove through the forest trees, dodged around boulders, and jumped over thorny bushes with the tiger as close as a shadow behind him. Just as the man felt the tiger's hot breath on his neck and the nick of a sharp claw through his shirt, he came to the edge of a high cliff. Without a thought, the man grabbed a thick vine within reach and slung himself over the cliff face. Letting the vine slide through his hands, he quickly lowered out of the tiger's reach. He heard his own heart pounding ferociously. He could barely catch his breath, but he felt so relieved to have escaped. As the man looked around to take stock of the situation, he glanced down at the base of the cliff. There, with a tail snaking leisurely back and forth, sat another tiger, her wide eyes intently fixed upon him as he dangled from above. Just then, the man noticed that the vine he held vibrated ever so slightly. He looked up to see a pair of mice poised on a mouse-sized ledge, nibbling away at the single vine on which his life hung. His truly desperate situation was dawning upon him, yet something shimmering and red caught his eye and made him investigate. He looked closely at and found a luscious, plump strawberry growing right out of a crack in the cliff. With one arm clutching the vine, he reached over with his free arm and plucked it. It was the most delicious morsel he'd ever tasted.
Today's special collection is for Ujema Place, a local nonprofit based in St. Paul. Ujema is one of the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, meaning cooperative economics and familyhood. The organization's mission statement says, Ujema Place provides holistic transformation opportunities for young Black men experiencing inequality at the intersection of race and poverty. Ramsey County Corrections works closely with this organization and says its programs are highly successful. Since its beginning in 2010, over 6,000 young men have gone through a culturally designed program with training and coaching to help disrupt the systemic poverty experienced by this population. The results are measured by improved housing status, educational attainment, job placement at a living wage, child support compliance, and reduced recidivism and/or criminal activity. Today, we invite your generosity. Your donation will help Ujema Place bring its transformative programs to young men seeking to build positive lives and become contributing members of their communities. Before we pass the donation plates, listen to brief testimonials from 2 men whose lives were changed after finding Ujema Place.
I want people that are watching this or want to be a part of this in any kind of way, I want them to understand that Ujema does make a change, you know, in people's lives, especially young Black men's lives. And we definitely need more people contributing to Ujema, you know, even just being a part of it, you know, and coming to get help.
Ujema Place is life-changing. I mean, they make miracles happen. I mean, they make it so you can be at rock bottom, but then be on top later on in life. I mean, you just have to do your part and play your part. Let them know where you struggle, let them know where you're trying to go, and then, you know, you have to show effort. It's a powerful feeling knowing that someone who's around you that cares to see you to do better. I mean, it just melts my heart. I mean, I didn't have a lot of it. I didn't really have that at all. I mean, people would come and go and wouldn't agree with me or judge you for certain things, but someone who cares to see you do good, just genuinely out of the heart, it just means so much. And I mean, you could describe it in so many ways, but the feeling is just so powerful.
Thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we live together.
This is a song I wrote called Golden Ticket, and it's about finding the present moment. Is the mic on here? Check, check, check. Yeah, it was on in our practice. project. It's okay. I got you. This is a song I wrote called Golden Tickets. About finding the present moment. Hey, there we go. Thank you, Aaron. All the times I spoke too soon or waited too late, all the times I changed my tune or made the same mistakes, all the times I held on so tight, or maybe not tightly enough, all the times I shut the door or followed fear over love. Oh, where can I go anywhere else to make it not so? Oh, where can I go when I already know this moment is my golden ticket? No matter what road I choose, this moment is my golden ticket. If I can just write it through. All the things I may never say, the places I may never go, the questions I carry all my days, the things I'll never know, all the stories I want to tell, and all that I hope to create, every last thing that's possible when belief guides the way. Oh, how can I be brave? Can anyone else show me the way? Tomorrow and yesterday, you won't be my cages. This moment is my golden ticket. No matter what road I choose, this moment is my golden ticket. If I can just write it through, I can just write it through.
Now is our time for meditation, but who's having a bit of the wiggles? Okay, there we go, down in front. Okay, so we're going to do a body meditation. We're going to wake up our bodies to then center our bodies. So I invite you, you can rise in body or spirit. You can do this risen or seated, but if you are able to rise and feel like you need to get a little movement, go for it. Okay, so first we're going to start by waking up our bodies. So I invite you to bend over and start tapping your feet and your legs. Tap your calves, wake them up, say good morning, calves. Tap your knees. Say good morning, knees. Tap your thighs. Tap your hips. Thank them for carrying you here this morning, for getting you out of bed. Maybe give your stomach a good rub. Maybe it's digesting breakfast, or maybe it's ready for breakfast. Coming up to your chest and tap your chest. Thank your lungs for taking in air. And then start waking up your arms. So you're going to tap each arm, wake it up. Tap the other arm, wake it up. And then you're going to tap your neck and thank your neck for holding your brain up. And then you're going to tap your head gently, tap your forehead, your face, tap your neck, open up your throat, and then do a big stretch. Take a breath, shake your arms out, shake your body out. And then cast your eyes down or close them and just let your arms hang and breathe. Oh, do you have some wiggles in your feet? Maybe do a little stomping. Maybe do a little more stomping. Ground those feet in this place. And then just settle. And slowly, mindfully, if you are risen, sit back into your seat. Don't pick anything up, just sit and breathe and keep your eyes down or close them if you can. Notice what's happening in your body. Notice any feelings you might be having. Any resistance, any joy, any sparklets that might be occurring. As we breathe and make space for the prayers of this community. This morning, we recognize that we are connected by an invisible web that holds us all on this planet, that holds us in this congregation, connects us to those we love, connects us to those we don't know, but we are responsible for, connects us all. This love that is within us, that connects us to others, that represents the divine, that we see when we look into each other's eyes. We feel that holding us. As we lift up our prayers this morning, we begin by praying for Maui, the people of Maui, those who are grieving the devastation of these fires, who are living with the trauma of losing loved ones, of losing their homes, their livelihoods. We send them the spirit of aloha. We send them love. We send them care as they make their way through such horrific loss. This morning, we send prayers for Maureen in Montana as she deals with COVID rebound. We recognize the sorrows present in being part of community this morning, part of community that recognizes when people pass and move on to the ancestors. This morning, we recognize longtime member Judith Barr, who passed away at the end of July. Her daughter Kara and granddaughter Shante were present when she passed. Cards of comfort are welcome. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. This morning, we also honor longtime member Dee Smith, who passed away on Monday morning at the age of 96. He died peacefully at home in the presence of his wife, Alice. Cards of remembrance are welcome. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember him. And we make space in this time to also name prayers of joy and safety and health to Elisa and Bjorn Peterson. May they have a healthy delivery for all. And we name that in this morning, many of us bring prayers on our heart. If there is someone you would like to lift into prayer this morning, you may say their name now. We pray that we may be reminded of this invisible web when we need prayers, and that those we have lifted up into prayer, whether spoken or unspoken, may feel our love and care radiating out towards them. Amen, and blessed be.
Love, this is your first time in this moment. You could not have come prepared. You may not see it, but you're shining. And I love you just as much when you're scared. Do you hear that voice? The one beneath the silence. Do you hear that voice trying to come through? Do you hear that voice? The truth that waits so patient. Do you hear that voice reminding you? You have always been enough. You have always been love. This isn't easy, so be gentle. May I offer you a song? It's all meant to be experimental, so you cannot do it wrong. Do you hear that voice that lungs. Do you hear that voice trying to come through? Do you hear that voice? The truth that waits so patient. Do you hear that voice reminding you? You have always been enough. Breathe easy. You have always been enough. Breathe easy. If you want to sing that breathe easy line with me, you're welcome. You have always been enough. Breathe easy. You have always been enough. Breathe easy. You have always been enough. Breathe easy. You have always been enough.
Thank you for your beautiful music. Something shimmering and red caught his eye and made him investigate. He looked closely and found a luscious, plump strawberry growing right out of a crack in the cliff. With one arm clutching the vine, he reached over with his free arm and plucked it. It was the most delicious morsel he'd ever tasted. And that's the end. This is a hard ending, right? The Man, Two Tigers, and a Strawberry is a story that I have introduced many times over the years to youth, most often for the first time in middle school. And let me tell you, the reception to this story, almost 100% of the time, is unfavorable. And that is a bit of an understatement. There is generally some level of outrage with a side of confusion and a general consensus that it was super rude of me to share a story with no conclusion. And this is fair. But it had been a while since I had shared the story with a group of middle schoolers. So in the spirit of sermon research, I introduced it to my 13-year-old for the first time this week. And his responses, shared here with permission and edited slightly for appropriateness, were, "What? It just ends there? It's supposed to have an ending. Why doesn't he just throw the strawberry to distract the mouse or throw it down real hard at the tiger? What is the point of this story anyway?" And I'm willing to bet that there may be a few of you who might have had a similar reaction to this story. I won't ask for a show of hands. And that is okay, because it is a tough story. It's meant to be. I have struggled with it too, at times finding deep meaning in the call to hold space for the metaphorical strawberries that surround me always, and the truth that we can hold joy and wonder even in the midst of grief and fear and loss. Other times I get distracted, I get stuck on the danger that exists in all directions, and I'm just desperate for a conclusion. And other times still, I wrestle with balancing the very real reality of the danger and the very sweetness of the strawberry without minimizing either one, because that's its own danger. This Zen Buddhist story is an example of a koan, a practice meant to help cultivate beginner's mind, to urge us toward a practice of living in mystery, and to help us set aside the grasping for concrete answers and endings, so we can instead notice what the story evokes within us: body, mind, spirit. In this practice, we are called into becoming rather than analyzing. And it was this practice that Nico invited us into earlier this morning, to simply pay attention to the feelings that arose in you as you received the story. I'm betting this might have been a bit of a challenge. It's not what we're used to. Paying attention to how a story moves through us and lives in us, rather than searching for that neat and tidy ending, is quite a different posture than we're used to in receiving a story. This is a posture of curiosity and imagination. Maybe you can feel that difference in your body. I think what we might be more used to is an intellectual posture, one where we try to make sense of it all, where we try to figure out what the author had in mind for us, right? We might process the story as if there might be a right or wrong interpretation, and we turn our minds into knots trying to figure out how it all ends or how it ought to end. And we are human, so this makes sense, and our human brains are wired to want to figure out all the things, because living in the muck of the unknown is really, really uncomfortable. And so, of course, this does not just apply to the written word, but also to our life experiences. We are so often thrown in the midst of the unknown and find ourselves trying to look at situations from every which way, and we try to make sense of it all. And we forget that the work of meaning making is not just an intellectual exercise. It is just as much a practice of curiosity and wonder and imagination. This past spring, our 9th grade coming of age youth presented their credo statements, or their statements of belief, to the congregation. In this rite of passage program, youth spend the whole year wrestling with big questions about what they value, who they are called to be, and the classic big questions. Is there a higher power? What about good and evil? What happens after we die? Is a hot dog a sandwich? These can be hard and uncomfortable questions because most often we can be left with more questions than answers. Except I'm told the hot dog question, there's actually a concrete answer to that one, but I think that's a different sermon. Yeah. One of our youth wisely reflected on not knowing in her credo statement. She says, "But what I do know is that it is okay to never know. Maybe sitting with the things that bring you awe in your life will help you eventually come closer to what is true for you. You have the rest of your life to discover the unknown, so just keep living." I love the reminder here that living necessarily includes the unknown and will continue to include the unknown, but also that awe can bring us closer to what is true for us. This posture of curiosity and wonder greets the discomfort of the unknown more as a traveling companion than an enemy. One of the ways that we practice greeting the unknown with a posture of curiosity is through sacred reading practices. Jessica reminded us of a practice that we've introduced here before, Florilegium. This practice invites us to make note of sparklets in text, not as an intellectual exercise. You don't actually have to know or be able to explain why a word or a phrase or a note or a feeling sticks out to you. Nor does the sparklet have to have any deeper meaning or value. Sparklets are completely neutral. They are simply noticings. The magic of this practice is that the individual sparklet then becomes part of a collection of sparklets. And while the individual sparklet brings its own beauty, it takes on a new shape in the Florilegium. And sometimes, when we sit with the Florilegium, new beauty and wisdom is revealed that maybe we hadn't noticed before. Florilegium is something that can be practiced by yourself. You might even have journals full of words and phrases from many different sources, as Mina mentioned earlier. Or you can practice Florilegium in a group, taking turns sharing sparklets out loud. And again, we aren't figuring out the text or deciphering the intent of the author or trying to figure out how it all ends. We are simply noticing sparklets. And so to help us get into this posture, I'm going to invite us into another short meditation. I'm going to invite you again to take a breath. And close your eyes if you are comfortable. And because florilegium actually means collection of flowers, I'm going to invite you to imagine that you are in the middle of a giant, gorgeous field of flowers. And imagine there is one flower in the field that stands out to you. It sparkles. And maybe you notice another and another. You don't need to know why these particular flowers sparkle to you, they just do. And so you gather them. And now in the midst of this giant field of flowers, you have a small, beautiful bouquet. At the beginning of the service, Jessica invited us to make note of sparklets during today's service. So we're going to take a moment to practice that together. Take a breath. Hold a moment for the words, phrases, music, sensory experiences so far this morning in worship. What sparkles for you? And because florilegium is so much more fun when we get to practice it together, I'm going to invite us all to have a moment to share with the people around you. Feel free to write sparklets on the flowers found in the baskets in the pew, and you can add them to our community florilegium boards around the room if you'd like. You can do that now or at the end of the service. And if you're at home, you can add sparklets to the chat box. And if a solo practice is what is calling you today, feel free to just jot down your sparklet for yourself or just move around and simply make space for noticing what has sparkled for you. I'm going to call us back together with ringing the singing bowl in about 2 minutes. Turn to your neighbor. I hope you all will continue sharing with one another and investigate our community florilegium boards more after the service. Another sacred reading practice that we have introduced here in groups is Lectio Divina. Lectio Divina is a practice that comes out of Christianity, and it was established as a monastic practice as far back as the 6th century. And this practice invites us to engage in 4 steps. You can find them in your order of service. I'm going to share an adaptation that we've been using with our children and youth for the past few years. The first step is to choose a passage of text or a song or life experience and to read that text out loud several times. It's lectio, reading, step 1. And we ask, what is the text literally saying? This is a harder step than it seems. The second step is meditation. What is the deeper meaning of this text? What does it stir up within you to notice that? The third step is oratio or prayer. It's a conversation. Where do these things show up in my own life? These deeper meanings, where do they show up in my own life? And the final step is contemplation and action. What is this text calling me to do in my life? Notice that there's nothing in these steps about figuring out how it all ends or what the author intended. It brings the text alive in the here and now and ends with an invitation into imagination. Given what this text has stirred up for me, what am I now called to do in my life? Scholar Duncan Robertson writes that this practice is most effective as a communal one, in part because starting in about the 2nd century, spaces and punctuations that had been placed between words disappeared. So reading out loud was a necessary step to make sense of the text. Also, the very act of sharing text out loud with one another transforms reading into an embodied experience. We might taste the words almost as we speak them. Our senses are engaged as we share stories with one another. Robertson makes it clear that intellectual comprehension is not the purpose of Lectio Divina. It is to bring sacred text alive in all of its complexity and to be in conversation with it, engaging with a posture of curiosity and wonder. It is a practice in meaning making. While Lectio Divina historically been practiced with biblical texts, we can practice this with any text. Our lives, too, can be sacred texts. A trend that I have noticed lately is that more and more people in my life are starting to share memories and stories from pandemic times. Others have shared that they've noticed this phenomenon too, as if we've all now had enough space for a breath to finally make sense of what we've been through. Maybe we're finding the spaces and punctuation as we speak these stories out loud. I've heard things like, hey, remember when all the playgrounds were closed? Or sometimes when I'm out with friends, I remember that there was a time when we just couldn't. Or remember when everyone was making bread and we had to make our own masks and we couldn't find toilet paper? In a way, this processing of the pandemic feels very much like the first stage of a Lectio practice, reading the sacred text of our lives, simply repeating the text, repeating what happened. Sometimes these conversations even move into stage 2 and beyond, reflections like, sometimes when I'm out with friends, I remember how alone I felt when we couldn't gather and how important community is to me. Now I make sure to hold intentional space for gathering. This feels so much to me like we are moving through the work of meaning making, both individually and communally. Back in March, we invited those who were ready, 3 years after the world shut down, to share stories of what pandemic time was like for you. We received only a few responses, but what was shared felt like receiving sacred text. Some shared that the isolation was unbearable. Others rejoiced in new ways to connect with community and even welcomed the chance to slow down. The responses reflected both hardship and little morsels of joy along the way. Looking back on my own 3 years, much of that time was spent fixated on the metaphorical tigers above and below, trying to make sense of everything that was happening. What is so clear to me now is that it is hard to maintain a posture of curiosity and wonder when there are tigers above and below, and we are simply hanging on for our lives. And that is okay. We get to be the meaning makers as we rest with what these stories and experiences now evoke within us. We can be in conversation with them, both individually and communally, and we get to decide what this sacred text is calling us to do now in our lives. We are reading our lives as sacred text, holding the questions together in community with curiosity and wonder and imagination. May it be so. Our closing hymn is number 131 in the gray hymnal, Love Will Guide Us. Anytime we gather, we are changed by one another. Our shared wisdom creates a beautiful florilegium indeed. Today, we bring with us these sparklets, this wisdom, this sense of curiosity and wonder. May we continue to hold one another and the wisdom we each share as sacred text. Go in peace.
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. Sing freely, people. We're in it together now. Well, I won't be afraid. No, I won't sit afraid. Just as long as you'll stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. If the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, and the mountains should crumble to the sea, I won't cry. I won't cry. I won't cry. No, I won't shed a tear. Just as long as you'll stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me.
Thank you. Let's hear for the OK Factor, huh?